if a leader, trying to prepare their team for future, whatever this is, future disruptions, future demands, even maybe on sustainability or others, is trying to do that, what is maybe the one thing that they should start doing tomorrow to make their team, let's say, more future prepared, more future ready? How can they build, I don't want to say culture, but a habit or a mind frame that is more directed towards that in day-to-day business operations? One thing, what would you recommend?
Now, this is obviously the hardest question to a professor who would love to lecture about all the different elements which you need to put in place. But trying to raise up to your challenge, I would say the most important thing you can do is to ask your colleagues to think about the exponential change stories of companies, of markets, of industry change, which they have experienced and which inspire them. Because what we take much time to lecture to our students, and this is something which at edX we want to make sure that all of the 10,000 students which at any given moment in time studying at edX, that they are capable of understanding system level change. And this can be the system of an industry. We talked about photovoltaics, which is the revolution in the energy system today. We can also think about systems in companies. So how do I create not the Kodak moment, but the Ørsted moment, where I have this positive tipping point and then this acceleration through making new technology financially viable, but also this systemic effects of us with our stakeholders. How can we come up with a better business model for all? Of course, these are the hardest nuts to crack, and this is why we think everyone needs to collaborate on this, and why we bring many different parties together when we talk about future of well-being and nutrition, for example, in one of our programs. But it's ultimately to have human action, human agency. Stories are the main catalyst. We need to understand that change is possible, that change has happened before, that change looks unlikely until it happens. As you might know, I'm a child of West Berlin, which was surrounded by the wall, by the Iron Curtain between East and West Germany. And change looked so unlikely until it happened and the wall fell down and Germany was reunited. And the same is true for all changes. So we need this narrative about change, about movement, and about human agency. If you nurture this in your organization, then you also nurture the capacity of people to drive these types of fundamental changes.
Wow, so you went really deep with that one. I I was expecting an answer like read a book or something, but I understand. Now, with how fast AI is evolving, some people believe that long-term planning actually does not make any sense anymore. Because technology is changing so fast, you have new technology building blocks building on each other. So that's why the rate of change is accelerating so fast. What is your take on that? Is it true that with AI and with the AI advances, long-term planning does not make any sense anymore? And that's why we see short-term planning more being prioritized? What is, in your opinion, the end game of that?
Well, I think what we're witnessing right now is something which we also witnessed before. I mean, there's a new way of treating data, which speeds up the way we can deal with data, which is ultimately for everyone who is doing analytic work is first of all great news. It is also a moment where it's important to think a bit beyond, where is this leading? What is the ultimate end game of that? And I think there's three main considerations which I would have here. The first is, can we, with AI, speed up decision making? And I think we can. The ability as an analyst to ask deep questions about, for example, I was interested the other day, what was the impact of Hartmut Medorn's tenure from, I think, 99 to 2009, if I remember correctly, of the Deutsche Bahn on what we see today. That the Deutsche Bahn is actually in a very bad shape. A lot of delays, a lot of infrastructure problems. This is something which, earlier I would have taken probably a week or two out of my calendar to try to get to some data about what key decisions we're taking, which have maybe a long-term effect on too little infrastructure investments, etc. Here I probably completed the same job within half a day. And I felt, okay, I'm actually drilled down to data, and the early artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT, etc., they had these huge weaknesses that you could not drill down to the actual source, which for an academic would be hugely worrisome. We say, well, I don't know what then this is based on, but tools like Perplexity and others, they're capable of doing that. So they give me a complex answer, and I can also go back to the original source and drill deeper so that I know whether that is fact or whether that is hallucination. So this process of speeding up, ultimately this might lead us to have very complex decision-making situations which we can let play out in real time. This is something, for example, also the teams at the World Economic Forum are working on. How can we speed up this? Then the second question, and I think that's a very interesting one, is to which extent can we make sure that decision-making on the future of humanity is still driven by humans? And that's a very controversial one, and that probably would warrant another discussion of an hour or so to drill deep into this question. But I would encourage everyone to reflect on this for the decisions that they are taking based on research with AI, for example. Is there enough understanding of where is this data coming from? What interpretation has a human operator done in this? Because ultimately, we're at the helm of our societies. In democratic societies, we elect human leaders because we believe that it's not good enough to just ask an algorithm to take complex decisions. We ultimately need human empathy. We need human compassion. We need the very fabric of, can we keep our society together as it is? And that needs to be done by humans. So this is highly controversial, and one needs to also make sure that this is happening. And I think the third is this, and I'm sure you're also confronted with this, when we're doing larger consultancy engagements with companies, and we emphasize working with the internal stakeholders a lot. Why? Because they are not only the ones which bring data, bring insights from the field, but they are ultimately also the ones who would need to implement change. And that can be a project, which runs for 4 or 5 weeks, which costs 50,000 euros. And then at the end of a project, you present it to the board who was outside maybe this entire project, and they say, okay, well, I could have done this with ChatGPT in 3 minutes, and it would have cost me a 20 euro subscription fee per month. And if we lose the capacity to understand the difference, I think then that has huge consequences on us as a society, on decision makers in boards, etc. And the real difference here, obviously, is that the foresight exercise, moderated here by us, maybe in this case, or by somebody else, or just internally, has brought together the humans which have hired in different positions in the organization, different mandates, and it facilitated this human thinking, this capacity to think about the future of an organization, which might be an organization of 400,000 people around the world, with just involving 40 or 60 who have, however, then the links to these 400,000. And that's what I think decision making needs to be still based on. I cannot imagine, and I don't want to imagine, a world in which there's just one person sitting there clicking a button and taking decisions which will affect all of these 400,000 people, for example.